Happy Friday. It's DocSwiner. Come on in. Hopefully you all are enjoying your summer so far. Taking it easy. All right. I'll wait a couple of moments. Are y'all enjoying lunch yet? I'm starving. It's time to eat. I figured I would get this out of the way first. Hey, Tabby 1908. Hey, how are you doing? It's good to see you. Long time no see. All right, so this is what we're calling tips and tricks, particularly for my medical professionals. But if you are a lay person, which means, outside of the field, hopefully some of these tips can be helpful, both with you being seen as a patient in the doctor's office, or if you are working in, any part of the medical profession, whether you are a physician, a PA, a nurse practitioner, a nurse, an MA, in the front office, all that stuff. Hey, Dr. Carmen, how are you doing? It's good to see y'all. So invite your friends, especially if you know those that are working in the medical profession. My motivation today to do this was, number one, hadn't talked to y'all in a little while. Hi, good to see y'all. But as you know, or as you may not know, for those, by the way, that are joining me for the first time, I'm Dr. Nicole Swiner, aka DocSwiner. I'm a family physician still, even though I am not currently in the clinical office setting, but doing a lot of different things outside of the office to achieve what we are calling work-life balance, which we now know really does not exist. It's more work-life integration, but trying to achieve more balance in my own personal life so I can be at home and be accessible for my loved ones and my two kids and my husband, and try to have some fun while paying the bills, but still learning how to use my medical degree to my advantage and use it in a lot of different disciplines in a lot of different ways, which is very possible. So I left the clinical setting probably about 2 years ago. And right, has it been 2 years? I don't know. About 2 years ago, definitely kind of influenced by what was happening with the pandemic and co-owning a practice and the financial instability of owning a practice, and, converting a lot of our visits to telemedicine, which was great and convenient and safe, but paid less. So a lot of stresses happen during that time. Hi, Healthy Heritage Lifestyle. Good to see you. I see a lot of my medical folks coming in. And outside of just the stress of dealing with owning a practice, practicing medicine, etc., I was also kind of experiencing the other things that brought me joy in work, in medical work, in wellness, in Black women's mental health and mental health in general, minority health, finding all these things that I love to do outside of the office, like speaking, teaching, publishing, and authoring books, starting some health and wellness things on the side in terms of doing the hydration stuff, did some clinical research. I've done a number of different things in the last couple of years, and I want to share my wealth of knowledge, both from a medical standpoint, but also from an entrepreneurial standpoint, because a lot of my medical folks are suffering. I was triggered most recently by yet another story of a Black female physician who took her own life because we don't know why, but the assumption is always that the work of being a medical professional, specifically a doctor, even more specifically for Black people and Black women in the medical field, things have gotten very, very stressful and heavy. The burden has become heavy with taking care of patients and wanting to be a strong health advocate for them, but having the burden of the work of medicine, the business of medicine, which medicine has now become. And I'm sure dealing with other personal things that we don't know about and we'll never know about. But I, fortunately, God willing, have been able to kind of figure out different things that you can do in medicine and still use your medical degree, still feel like you are contributing to community at large, still can feel like you're being an advocate for both patients and your other medical colleagues. And so I want to share some of those things so that folks don't feel so stuck. Disclaimer, by the way, I did get permission from my current employer. I have a part-time job with a utilization management company. I got permission to share some of these things, these tips and tricks. So I'm not sharing confidential information, but I do feel like I'm kind of, now kind of being on the inside, on this side of the fence, I am sharing some very helpful things that we, particularly as medical folks, don't often have access to. Nobody really tells us this on a regular basis. So I feel like I'm giving you some of the cheat codes on the utilization management side. We'll talk about that. Other thing is, again, disclaimer, if you're having any type of mental health issue, if you're dealing with your own personal struggles, please reach out for help. There is help, whether that is through your primary care provider, physician, therapist, psychiatrist, your faith folks that you trust to help counsel and help you, lead you in the right direction to better health. So please reach out when you need help. I certainly am also here. If you ever want to DM or email me, if you're having any particular struggles, or if you're a medical professional that wants to talk about switching up, transitioning things in your career, I also have become a bit of an expert in that too, through my own personal experiences. So there's a whole lot more than I have time to share in just this one Instagram Live, but things that I want to review include all these wonderful things that you can do outside of the office as a medical professional, still make money, hopefully strike some sort of balance between work and life. And then I want to talk specifically about utilization management and what that means, and the tips and tricks for my medical folks who feel like doing all the insurance claims, getting the approvals for certain studies and all of that is something that you hate doing, and you can never figure out what the tips are, what the tricks are. I'm gonna give you some of the cheat codes. So let's start out. And hey, everybody, as you come in, I see M.M. Powell smiles. I see Immeasurable Greatness. Hello, welcome. Invite your medical folks. So what can you do as a medical physician, that means with an MD or DO, outside of the office if you're tired of doing clinical medicine? There is no shame and there should be no guilt in saying, you know what, I'm tired of seeing patients every day in clinic. That's fine. I'm tired of having to, go into the hospital, admit and deal, with sick patients. It's okay to need a break from that. It's okay to not feel like you have to do that the rest of your medical career, the rest of your life. There are many other ways that you can use your medical degree. One I've discovered is through clinical research. There are plenty of kids coming out of school now that bypass the whole clinical setting altogether and go straight to clinical research. That is fine. You can use your MD, your DO, your PhD, your Master's of Public Health. You can use that in the clinical research setting to be a primary investigator, or a principal investigator for a study, or just being involved in clinical research in some way. So I spent almost a year or so with hey, yes, Dr. Carmen, I'll keep this recording. Gotta go see those patients. Go ahead and take care of your business. I'll send or I actually will add this recording to my timeline. Clinical research is a wonderful way to stay involved with the community as a patient advocate, particularly in the minority health sector, because we are always, I and the research community in general now is very focused on increasing representation of patients that are involved in studies. They want more brown and black folks to be involved in clinical research. That's always very important. So being an investigator in certain clinical trials, whether it be medications or vaccines, is very helpful, because then they see your face and hopefully they will gain more trust because you are there to help them. So you can do clinical research. You can start your own health and wellness business in some form or fashion. I started a hydration and wellness company called Serenity Hydration and Wellness. With your medical degree, you can, of course, file as a PLLC and LLC, use your medical license in that way to do consultations, to provide hydration, to provide vitamin supplementation. If you want to do weight loss, you can do that. And, since you have your medical license, you can prescribe medications if that's what you want. You can create your own clinic, whether it be virtual or in person. You can do that. You can be involved in medical IT. You know, there are all types of apps that are being developed, all types of telemedicine companies that are being developed that you can get involved in and be kind of the medical director in that realm. But the most recent thing that I started doing is called utilization management, or UM. And I didn't know anything about it until about 2 years ago, when I started kind of thinking about what else could I do outside the clinic. Utilization management is a discipline, a specific discipline of medicine that has to do with the balance of how many studies and treatments are paid for and covered by insurance companies, and us not overusing or misusing the system, and the system not having to pay as much money that it has to. Does that make sense? So essentially what I do, and there are different levels to UM. I'm a physician clinical reviewer for a company that does utilization management. It's a third-party company, meaning the insurance companies hire us as clinical reviewers to help decide whether a study is needed or not based on their certain rules and protocol. So we're kind of the unbiased third party that's on the other end of a referral when your doctor says, okay, I want a patient to have this CT, this MRI, this PET scan for different things. And these are the steps that you have to take in order to get that covered. I, as a physician clinical reviewer, am on the other side, unbiased, you know, hopefully trying to help you out the best way I can, trying to help the patients out the best way that we can. But there are steps and there are check boxes essentially that you have to meet in order to get that study covered. So I do that for a company, and I am on the radiology side. So I take care of, you know, when the MRIs, the CTs, the PET scans, the chest CT, you know, when any of those things come through as a referral, you know, the physician or the provider has seen the patient. They say, this is what the study I want my patient to have. The front desk then sends all the paperwork over to the insurance company, and then they route it to us as the NIA folks to look at and review and say yay or nay, and then why. So a lot of it, again, I do this part-time, a lot of it has to do with on the computer reviewing cases, but then sometimes I actually do what's called peer-to-peer, where they call me on the phone, the doctor, the provider, whoever ordered the study, and they say, okay, well this, hey, Ken Boogie Down, hey, thank you for inviting your medical folks. But I can talk to them on the phone and tell them why it was denied and what they can do to get it approved. A lot of the stuff that I'm learning on this other side of the fence is what I wish I knew in clinical practice for 15 years, because it would have made my job a lot easier. It would have made a lot of the admin stuff that we had to do with insurance companies a lot less burdensome. And I would have hated it less if I had known that some of these things I could have done ahead of time, or these are things you have to make sure you get done so that you can get these studies covered. So a handful of tips, and then I'm not going to talk it out of death, but a handful of tips that you can think about, especially if you are a medical provider or a front desk office that's helping to refer to get these studies done, include the following. A lot of the study requests that I get have to do with joint or back pain issues. So patient has lower back pain, they have sciatica, they have knee pain, they have shoulder pain, and we want this MRI or the CT scan to be done. First thing I wish I would have known about, number one, is that the majority of insurance companies in the medical world, and if you look up the protocols, prefer MRI over CT almost always. Okay? So for some reason, in my medical mind, I thought CT is going to be less expensive. CT is less radiation, so let's get that done. A CT is usually done more quickly in the emergency room, so let's ask for that first. It's actually the opposite. Most insurances in most cases will prefer you doing the MRI instead of a CT unless there's a very specific reason. So almost always request to do an MRI. Unless you have a reason and you look that up, you have a reason to do the CT instead. The other thing I wish I would have known is that there is a website called radmd.com. It's a public website. radmd.com is a website that medical professionals can use and go look up. You can actually look up the insurance plan that your patient has, and it will tell you specifically what things you need in order to get the study approved. I wish I would have known this. That would have saved me a lot of trouble. That would have saved, unless we talk about this stuff, we just don't know about it. Or unless we call and get that peer-to-peer colleague who's like, look, in the future, to make your job easier, go on radmd.com and you'll know what to request next time, or you'll know what things to include in your note, so that next time this is an easier process. So that's the second thing. Let's go back to like MRIs and stuff for joints, back, pain, trouble, rotator cuff tears, joint, all that stuff. So if you are a provider and you're referring to have your patient have this study done, let's say you're going to request a shoulder MRI because you think someone has a rotator cuff tear. Number one, your note has to specifically say, okay, of course, I think the patient should have an MRI for rotator cuff injury tear, but your physical has to note where that exam is abnormal. Okay? You just can't say in the history, patient has shoulder pain, and then my plan is to order an MRI. Your physical has to note why you think the shoulder is injured, right? So do they have joint tenderness? Can they not do abduction, adduction? Can they not do, certain type of maneuvers? That has to be specified in your note first. Second thing, and probably the most important thing, and probably the most frequent reason why things like that or like MRIs are denied when it comes to joint, is that you didn't either send the patient for physical therapy or give them home stretching exercises, what we call HEP or home exercise program exercises to do. Or if you did refer them to PT or you did give them home exercises to do, you didn't specify how often they actually did it and the dates that they went to PT. I would say 70% of the stuff that I review has to do with the lack of that information in the note. Okay. Thankfully, when you do a peer-to-peer or you call and you talk to one of us and you say, hey, why wasn't my study covered? The patient did BT. Usually I, on the other end, can say very easily, oh, I see. It's because you didn't include the dates. Can you upload the dates of those PT visits real quick? Let's see if we can get that resolved. And so, usually we can resolve it with the phone call, but to prevent yourself from getting that original denial, prevent the delay in treatment, prevent your patient from being able to get what they need, prevent you from having to do the whole phone call and re-upload, including that in your note saves you a lot of time. Okay. And again, even if you work the front desk or you're the MA with the provider and you know that they are going to request a study, okay, let me go check in the note and make sure they meant, they wrote down the dates for PT. Let me go back and make sure that they included a copy of the home exercises we sent them home with. Let me make sure that's done. Or if not, let me remind them. Okay. So that's a good one. So again, shoulder, knee, back, neck, joint pain issues, and you're referring to get that CT or the MRI. Number one, remember that MRI is almost always preferred over CT, especially when it comes to joint. Number two, make sure you note what's abnormal in your physical exam, especially if you did a particular maneuver, that has a name to it, like Epley's, that usually is a trigger that, yes, something is wrong with the joint. And if you sent them to physical therapy or home exercise program, you include the specifics in your note. Patient went to PT, these dates in the last 6 weeks, failed treatment, we still need the MRI. Or patient did this copy of these exercises, they did them twice a week for the last 6 weeks, still having pain, I need the MRI. Easy, right? Easy. You as the patient, when you go and see your physician, knowing that you might need an MRI for a particular reason, remind them of these things. Say, hey, you know what? I have a friend that works on the utilization management side. She said, make sure you say this in my physical exam. Make sure it's true now. There's no lying. This was my abnormal physical exam. I've done these exercises for these weeks. These are my dates of the physical therapy visits. Make sure to include that. If you have an x-ray that you've done, that's also great to include. But sometimes if you have abnormal enough of a physical exam, you don't necessarily need the x-ray. But sometimes you will need an x-ray before you do an MRI. Okay? Does that make sense? It's a lot. It's a lot, but I feel like I'm going to spill this out to you guys before I forget because I want to tell you the cheat code. When it comes to things like abdomen, pelvis, right? So you have abdominal pain, you have pelvic pain, there's something that you're suspicious about, worried about, you've been to the doctor a couple of times, they can't figure out, etc., what's going on, and they want to do an abdominal or pelvic study. On the provider side, make sure almost always they're going to want some other study done first. So did you do an ultrasound? Did you do an x-ray? Did you do a scope? If it's, pertinent to what issue they're having. They almost always want to see that you did that. They also almost always want to make sure that you've done some form of lab beforehand. And I'll explain why. So a lot of what we deal with in the medical field nationally is cost, right? If there are easier, cheaper ways to figure out your diagnosis, you want to do that first anyway for the benefit of the patient, number one. But number two, to prevent overspending that we don't need. So for a kidney stone, for instance, you don't want to jump right to sending them for a radiology test or sending them for the most expensive radiology test. You don't want to jump to a CT if you don't have to do a CT. A lot of the times you can do an x-ray plus your urine, blood in the urine, bacteria in the urine, plus a stone that you see on an x-ray is enough to tell you that the patient has a stone, right? You don't want to skip all that and go to the most expensive test and the test that will expose your patient to the most radiation, because that's dangerous. We don't want to overexpose people to radiation if we don't have to. We want to get the details that we need so we can treat the patient, but we don't want to overexpose them to radiation, and we don't want to overspend where we don't have to, right? So that's why we do all this in utilization management, because it helps us to figure out, okay, number one, are we treating the patient with the best care? And then are we trying to not overspend and not over-radiate where we don't have to? That's a better explanation than my original one. All right. What other juicy tips? I think those are the big ones. The other frequent request, review, denial thing that I usually get includes what is called overlapping. So sometimes the provider will order both a foot and an ankle MRI, or a knee and a lower extremity CT. We call these overlapping because when you do one, you'll see a little bit of the other and you don't need a double study. So usually the insurance company is saying, okay, so if you're looking at the ankle and the ankle is your main concern, then you don't necessarily need a view of the foot because you'll get enough in the ankle, right? Unless, again, you specify something specifically like, no, we want to make sure that it includes the big toe because we're also looking for this. But if your patient has ankle pain and you order a foot and an ankle MRI, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get covered for one, but not both. What else? The last juicy tip I'll add from a UM standpoint from medical folks. Again, this is all to reduce your burden at work so that you can feel that you're spending your time well, and you're getting well reimbursed for actually seeing the patient, treating the patient, not being on the phone with the insurance company all the time. Last juicy tip that I'll provide is a lot of times when studies are being requested, what'll happen is someone will say, okay, I want to order a chest CT from a patient because they are a smoker and they have this nodule. But when they went to their lung doctor also requested one that you didn't know about. And so that is pending in the system. It looks like duplicate requests are being sent. So, long story short, you want to make sure that when you order a study, somebody else didn't order it, because that's going to waste your time. Because they're going to want to know, all right, this other person or even you requested this study a couple of months ago. We approved it. Where is it? Did you have it? What are the results? Why are you now requesting this current study? That has, I would say, probably 15 to 20% also of what I see when I'm doing request denials is denying one because you forgot that you didn't, put the results in of the previous request, or you didn't know that their other doctor referred them for the study and it was already approved. So you want to check with that. Or you at least want to say, hey, I know that the patient's, lung doctor also scheduled a chest CT. Patient was not able to make that appointment for whatever reason, so that's why we are requesting a new one. You want to be specific about that. Okay? that's just a taste. I'm not going to give you all of it at one time. It's very overwhelming. But I felt like I need to be spilling this out. I need to be telling my people this, because I feel like the more we know, particularly on the admin side of, dealing with pharmacies, dealing with pharmacies, dealing with pharmaceutical companies, dealing with the insurance companies, makes our lives easier as a provider as we try to take care of our patient. It makes us less stressed out. It takes less time. If we are efficient on the admin side, or we can teach our support staff to be more supportive and know the tips and tricks, the tips and tricks on the admin side, then that actually gives us more time to actually deal with the patient and take care of the patient and feel the satisfaction of being the patient advocate and doing the medical stuff, right? Does that make sense? My goal is always to help you guys to achieve balance, achieve better mental health, have more time at home, having fun, getting your work done and working hard, but having more time outside of the office so you can feel fulfilled and feel balanced. So that's always my goal. All right. If you have any questions, concerns, of course, we can always do one-on-one consultations. That's one of the things I have available through Serenity Hydration and Wellness, is you can do a one-on-one consultation with me about whatever thing you want, usually stress or self-care related, or if you went to see your doctor, you want a second opinion, or you're a doc or a medical professional that wants to do a career transition, I'm here for that. So you can sign up for that under my Serenity Hydration and Wellness, or under my, not my Linktree, but my Calendly link. We can schedule and talk about those things just to make your life easier. Okay. Lots of other fun stuff and announcements coming up this summer. The thing that's coming up next Monday, or this coming Monday, which is Juneteenth. You're welcome, Unmeasurable Greatness. I'll be on here some more so I can share some more in little, chunks, give you some nuggets. But the next big thing is Juneteenth, this Monday. We are going to launch finally our Black Men's Mental Health Anthology that I wrote with a couple of my friends, colleagues, and co-authors. We're going to launch that ebook on Juneteenth, so stay tuned for that. We're probably going to go live and do some sharing of what we've written from that book. And then next Friday, we're actually going to have the in-person launch party. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't already signed up, we sold out a couple of days ago. It's a free event, but I was kind of locking it at 50. I added a couple of extra tickets at the end. So if you want to come, go ahead and sign up and join us for our free party. Rick Swiner is going to be DJing. We're going to have food, drink. The author's going to be there selling their books. We're going to talk about what's very important in terms of the current statistics as far as Black men's mental health is concerned. We'll talk about Black boy joy, all that wonderful stuff. And hopefully I will have my video done at my final project through my Harvard certificate. Hopefully I'll have my video done so I can debut it that night as well. So I'm looking forward to that. And then we got some other announcements coming up soon. But be well, go enjoy the weekend, have a wonderful summer, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.